Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time. I'm your host, Scott Murphy, and on today's show, we're doing another one of our bonus film episodes. As some listeners may be aware, this is where we cover a film connected to the main season, but not starring the action star we've just covered. This time, we picked The Three Musketeers, or should I say, Disney's The Three Musketeers, because there's many film adaptations of The Three Musketeers. Why did we pick that? Well, because it stars Rebecca De Mornay, who starred alongside Kurt Russell in The Backdraft, and Oliver Platt, who starred alongside him in Executive Decision. So, usually I have my regular co-host, Craig, but he couldn't make it for this episode due to some undisclosed adventuring reasons. So in his stead, I enrolled friend of the pod, YouTuber Caleb Knutson. Hi, Caleb.
Hello, I'm here, and let me just first start this by saying I hate cannonballs.
That's a good one. There will be more fun quotes from this movie just coming up. I should also mention to our listeners that this completes what we are calling the Caleb trilogy, because you were also on the Backdraft episode and the Executive Decision episode.
Yeah, kind of just worked out that way. Two Kurt Russell films that I really enjoy, and just out of nowhere, here comes this third film, and it's like, hey, they're all connected in some way. And I loved this movie as a kid, so let's talk about it.
And as listeners who may have listened to Caleb's previous appearances, there might be certain things that might come up again, as they usually do when Caleb is on the show. For example, wrestling references, and probably at least one mention, if not more, of the film Batman Forever.
Yeah, there's going to be a Batman Forever reference.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely
with
this
big
movie.
One in this entire movie, yeah.
Anyway, now on to today's film, which was released on November 12th, 1993. It was directed by Stephen Herek, and at this point, I usually read out the director's notable credits, but we're going to play a little game, so I'm not going to do that right here. It was, of course, very loosely based on the Alexander Dumas novel of the same name, while the screenplay was written by David Loughrey, whose other notable credits include Passenger 57, Money Train, Star Trek V, and a lot of stalker kind of obsession thrillers. He wrote that movie Lakeview Terrace with Samuel L. Jackson, and then he seemed to write a bunch of other movies in a very similar vein. Critically, it currently holds a 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 28% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 29 reviews, 43 on Metacritic based on 24 reviews, and a 2.9 on Letterboxd. Finally, box office wise, it made $53.6 million off of a $30 million budget, making it the 30th biggest film of 1993. And probably not the kind of hit that Disney wanted.
Probably not. I mean, that just about made its budget back, I would say.
I think it's I think it's definitely in the green. I think it, by the time you factor in like video sales and there's been DVDs released, and there was a 25th anniversary Blu-ray release in 2018. So I'm sure it's made its money back fine. It's just probably just not the kind of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves size hit that they were probably hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, Robin Hood, and then you mix all like the story elements, at least in particular the story elements from Princess Bride of Inigo Montoya in here. But yeah, it's one of those films that I remember watching a ton as a kid, but I guess not back in 1993. Not a ton of people saw it as much as I did.
I mean, I'm kind of the same. I did not see it at the cinema, but I definitely rented it, and I definitely have saw it on television a bunch of times, during my childhood. And I do feel like it's very particular people in our age bracket who remember this movie. I don't think it's a particularly well remembered action movie from the 90s or one of the big swashbuckling adventures that people still talk about today. But there is a small band of people that I think remember this movie, and all in a similar age bracket of kind of early 30s to kind of 40, maybe.
Yeah, because this was the one that parents just kind of put on. Yeah, I think you're right. It wasn't a movie that you went to the movie theater to see, but it's definitely one that you did rent, or you purchased and just watched it over and over again. Especially if you had a little boy like myself and a little toy sword, and whenever it was playing, just kind of whacked it around like crazy because I thought I was D'Artagnan. So yeah, this is one of those weird enigma of movies because I think it's a really fun time, and it's a really cool time for the entire film. But yeah, it's one of those movies that everyone just kind of sleeps on and forgets about.
Yeah, I think so. Rewatching this movie, I was saying to my partner earlier on today when I rewatched it, I was saying I definitely can see why I liked this movie as a kid, and I can also definitely see why it got bad reviews.
Yeah, I can see that too. There are moments here where I think I was swooning over Chris O'Donnell back then, just because here's the Batman Forever reference. I'm a huge Robin fan, and when he was Robin a couple years later with Batman Forever, and going back and watching this movie, I'm like, yeah, he's Robin. I love Robin. This is awesome. But now watching it this couple weeks ago for my channel, it was, yeah, he's very much like Orlando Bloom from the Pirates films. Where
I can see where you're going with this. Yeah.
He looks good on camera. He can hit that heroic pose, but
he's as stiff as a board.
Stone wall. There is nothing there.
Yeah, he's so wooden. I'm kind of the opposite. Even as a kid, I found Chris O'Donnell an irritating screen presence. I was not a fan of. I was a fan of Robin in other mediums, be it comic books or animated. But as much as I did like Batman Forever as a kid, for various reasons that we will talk about when we do cover that movie in a few months. Even then, I wasn't. I was like, oh, every time he was on screen, I was just like, he's bringing the movie down for me.
Well, and plus, he had the coolest sword in this movie. Like the gold hilt and everything. Like, yeah, I want that. He's so cool. But then, yeah, as an adult, you're like, he's not really that cool. It's really Oliver Platt who kind of steals it for me now. Yeah, I thought he was funny as a kid, but nowadays it's just like, no, he's awesome. Well, actually, let me correct myself. The person I think who steals this film and who gets slept on as an amazing villain in cinema history is Tim Curry here.
Well, yeah, we'll talk more about that. Yeah, I think like for me, it's kind of as a kid. My favorite was that I always kind of liked kind of witty comic characters. I was always attracted to that. So even as a kid, I probably slept on to Tim Curry's villain performance. Probably tickles me more, as a grown up. And I remember watching this movie as a teenager and enjoying Tim Curry's villain performance. But I remember when I first saw this movie, I probably because I'm just rooting for the heroes, all that. Like you probably slept on that performance, but Oliver Platt was always my favorite thing in this movie from the very first time I saw it.
He gets all the fun one-liners. He has all the fun gadgets and the cool three-headed knives and everything. He's a delight, and he still is here.
But the listeners might be thinking, we were promised a game. Like where's the game gone? Like you didn't read out his notable credits for some reason. Are you just going to forget that? No, I'm not going to forget that. So before we dive into the plot, I want to talk a little bit about the director, Stephen Herek. Now, Stephen Herek is not a critically acclaimed director. He's not the kind of director that you think of as being like, oh, I'm a fan of that guy, you know, in the way that you might think of like, oh, you're a fan of Scorsese or the Coen brothers or Tarantino or Kubrick or something like that. One of those famous filmmakers, Spielberg, whatever, you know. But it turns out that I've seen a shitload of Stephen Herek movies. So we're going to play a little game of how many Stephen Herek movies have you seen?
Oh, God. Oh, God. Here we go.
Okay, so Stephen Herek made his debut in 1986 with Critters.
I have not seen Critters.
Not seen Critters. I have seen Critters. One for me.
All right.
Second movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
I definitely have seen that one.
All right. Okay. 2-1.
Okay.
Third
All
movie, Don't Tell My Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
I have never heard of that one.
Okay. Funnily enough, weirdly, I actually have seen that. So I've seen his first 3 films. 3-1. His next movie, I'm almost positive you have seen, is The Mighty Duck.
Yep. Definitely have seen that.
So that is 3-2. The Three Musketeers, obviously we've both seen that. We're talking about it. So that's
4-3. I'm behind.
Wait, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, wait, 5. No, we've got to 5. No, it's 5-3. It's 5-3. Because you've not seen 2 of us.
You're right.
We're very bad at counting, apparently. Mr. Holland's Opus.
I have seen this one.
Okay, so that's 6-4. I'm the same. 101 Dalmatians.
And that's the Glenn Close one, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I have seen that one.
7-5.
Ugh. Okay.
Holy Man, the Eddie Murphy comedy.
I have not seen Holy Man.
I have seen this man's first 8 films.
Oh my God.
8-5. His next movie is Rockstar, the Mark Wahlberg film.
I have seen that one once.
Okay, so have I once. 8-6. And at this point, this is a point where I've just stopped seeing things made by him. So like we'll continue just in case you've seen them. Life or Something Like It is an Angelina Jolie romantic comedy.
Nope, have not seen that one.
Okay, so we're still at 8-6. Man of the House is a Tommy Lee Jones crime comedy.
I remember seeing trailers for it.
I do also remember seeing trailers for it and never watched it.
Never watched it.
It kind of really drops off after this. Dead Like Me, Life After Death is apparently based on the short-lived television series Dead Like Me, created by Brian Fuller.
Nope.
I didn't even know this movie existed. Into the Blue 2, The Reef.
Yeah, my pubescent self did see that movie, actually.
What? The sequel?
The sequel.
You've seen Into the Blue 2?
To the Paul Walker and Jessica Alba one? Yeah, I've seen that sequel.
You've seen the sequel?
Maybe half of it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Does half count?
Yeah. Okay. 8-7. Amazing. 8-7. All right. And I'm pretty sure this must have been the low point of his career. Okay. The next one, 2011 film. It's The Chaperone.
The low point in whose career?
Low point in everybody involved.
Because little Hunter decided to be a bus driver. Yes, I have seen this one.
Yes.
I'm the idiot WWE fan who's like, yeah, I'm gonna watch all of those movies from the WWE studios.
I think this is probably the point that I stopped watching them after this.
Yep.
Oh no, there's that. No, wait, that might be a lie, actually, because I think there's like an Edge buddy cop comedy that I can't remember the name of now that I think came out like maybe a year or two after this.
Yeah. I did not see that one though. I do know the one you're talking about though. I remember.
Yeah. I think that might have been the last WWE studio movie I watched.
I think I watched The Chaperone just because CM Punk and everyone at that time in wrestling was just constantly ripping on Triple H for that film. So I'm like, I have to see this. And it was kind of like years before with Cena and the Marine. I'm like, everyone keeps ripping on this. I have to see this. And oof.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, like, I've not seen many of the WWE studio ones. Like, I've not seen any of the Marine sequels. But like, for, same as you, because everybody was kind of ripping on them. Like, I was like, oh, I've got to check it out. Like, and by God, I mean, like, Cena has improved. Like, I'm not a big Cena fan, but I can say that he has improved slightly from the terrible low point of the Marine. But yes, so for people who don't know, the Hunter that we're referring to is Triple H, Hunter H. Helmsley, who was the star of The Chaperone. The last two, one's called Reverse Runner, which is apparently wait a second, he just executive produced that. He did not direct it. No, so the last one is called The Great Gilly Hopkins. I've never heard of it.
I have no idea. Looking at the poster here, kind of looks like a kids movie.
Kind of does. Kind of, yeah. Apparently comedy drama. Apparently stars Kathy Bates. It's based on a children's book. So yes, like you say, it's kids movie. So, unbelievably, Stephen Herek, you have seen 7 of his films. I have seen 9 of his films.
Wow.
That's kind of crazy.
I guess he's one of those directors that always just kind of falls into the one that kind of the movie that parents kind of put on for their kids, I guess. I don't know. Yeah,
I think like he just seemed to be like Disney's go-to guy in the 90s just for like random projects. I've just been like, he's like, yeah, he's just one of those kind of working directors that obviously had a contract with Disney. Like, throughout all of the 90s, it seems.
And he just seemed kind of like the reliable one to always just pump out just a nice, simple, easy hero wins in the end type film, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what this is. I mean, we have a lot of dark scenes and some dark characters here, but in the long run, the Three Musketeers is a pretty easy, simple hero's tale, and this version, I mean, takes it from the telling from the French point of view, and let's just go, hey, this is American. This is all. We lose the accents except for Tim Curry. Let's make this an American French tale.
It is, yes, it is very much American. It's American British. Most of the villains are British, and most of all the heroes are American. All of the heroes have talking parts. So yeah, they're all American, and we have like in terms of the talking parts in terms of the characters of any significance, and she doesn't have a lot of significance. There's only one French actress of any real significance in the movie.
And who is that?
The actress who plays Constance, the Queen's Hand, is played by Julie Delpy, and
I had a feeling. Yep, or as Chris O'Donnell would pronounce it, Constance.
And as we'll discuss, that is one of the laziest written romances possibly in film history.
But hey, it lasts for the entire movie. You feel it. It's strong.
Oh yeah, they fall in love in one scene, and we'll get to it. We'll get
literally fall in love. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Love at first sight. Yeah. Whatever. Dear. So before we get fully underway, yes, listener, we're not fully underway yet. What happens in these episodes is we describe the plot of the movie and kind of give a commentary of the kind of running commentary on the film. So the episode is maybe like 20 minutes in, but we've not officially started yet. But before we do officially start, I've got to give you your official spoiler warning so nobody can shout at me on the internet. So you have been warned. We talk about the whole movie from beginning to end, talking about everything in it. And if you don't want to hear that, or if you haven't seen the movie, go away, watch the movie, come back and listen to this episode. So there you go. You can't shout at me. I mean, you can shout at me for other things, I'm sure you will. But, just that one specific thing, can't shout at me. Caleb, tell us how the movie begins.
I was going to say, they're probably shouting, like, just start the episode, God!
Well, that's why I cut to you. I was saying.
But the film opens with what was shocking to me to remember, because I completely forgot, but just how great of an opening introduction this is to our main villain. We have this epic score, operatic choir singing, the Rectus in the background, and Cardinal Richelieu is being paddled his way to the underground docks, I guess, of the Kingdom of France, or the palace or whatever. And he's coming in with his silk gown, the boat. It has like this dragon skull on it. It really paints Cardinal Richelieu, or however you want to pronounce it in this movie. You get like 4 or 5 different pronunciations of Richelieu. I think Kiefer Sutherland says Richelieu at one point. I'm not sure, but it really paints.
I think we'll just stick with Richelieu, and we'll try and keep the one consistent. Unlike the movie, we'll try and keep the one consistent pronunciation.
But it really paints Richelieu as this incredibly evil, demonic person, and he's walking up the docks, and he meets up with his first in command, Captain Rushfort, I believe is how they pronounce it. Michael Wincott, I think.
Yes. Rockfort.
Okay. Who Michael Wincott, if you don't know who that is, he is the sheriff's right-hand man from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He's the villain in The Crow. One of the most recognizable voices I think you've probably ever heard in cinema. And here they're talking about this thief, I guess, who stole, and because he stole to try to feed his family, he's like, please save me for the love of God. And Tim Curry just slowly walks up to him with this little smirk on his face and says, "Oh, very well, in the name of God," and orders Rochfort to kill him. And then we go to black, or no, actually, before we cut to black. Tim Curry, again, Richelieu has an amazing line of just saying, "One less mouth to feed." Again, introducing this character as he doesn't give a shit about the people of France. He only cares about himself and what keeps him in power. And if it's him being able to give and take life, that gives him all the power in the kingdom, more so than the king, I think, or at least how he thinks. And then we cut to black, and we come up on our main young, dashing hero, D'Artagnan, played by Chris O'Donnell, who we've talked about already. And he's in a duel, little sparring fencing match with someone by the name of Gerard, because D'Artagnan had slept with his sister, or at least dishonored his sister.
Yeah, I think it's implied that he slept with the sister, yeah.
Yeah.
It's never explicitly stated, but it's certainly heavily implied.
He did say that, hey, I was leaving for France. She wanted to give me something to remember her by. We can only assume what that is.
Yeah.
And
given the rest of the movie, we'll discuss the horniness of this movie, but we'll get into that more later.
Oh yes. But as a kid, I remember this whole fight scene. I don't remember this character Gerard, because he has the most falsetto-y voice from a male character that I've ever heard. D'Artagnan, I shall come after you, D'Artagnan. But he loses the duel, and D'Artagnan seemingly is going to run him through, or at least, make it so that he can't be followed. And all of a sudden, Gerard's brothers are on horseback, about to reach them at their duel, assumingly to kill D'Artagnan.
I did want to mention one thing, it's one of these things of, watching movies in 2021, looking back at the 90s and stuff like that. And I'm sure as a kid, I laughed at this Gerard character. I'm just sure because he's just one of those kind of irritating, cowardly villains that you're just you point and laugh at, and you're like, when he gets his comeuppance, you're just like, nothing goes right for him, and you're always terribly amused by it, and all that. And as a kid, yeah, I did laugh heartily at that. As an adult, looking back on it, there's a part of me that's still amused by it, but there's a part of me that is slightly uncomfortable with it, because I feel that it falls into this category of kind of posh British villains that pops up quite a lot in action movies in the 80s and 90s, who are, shall we say, slightly mincing, and it's kind of suggested that they might possibly be gay, and because of their gayness, that makes them A, less of a man, B, naturally cowardly, and C, a villain.
I guess I could see. I wasn't getting the homosexuality at all.
He's kind of camp and kind of mincing, and he's got that falsetto voice and he's got that kind of heavy makeup, and he's kind of I feel like he's kind of coded in a way that is supposed to make you think like, oh, he's a limp-wristed gay man.
Okay, I was kind of taking it like like we said, that this is an Americanized version of a French story. I was thinking that this was more of like this American studio Disney kind of poking fun at just the stereotypical American idea of Frenchmen.
Of them being more effeminate or something.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
Yeah. I just like, I don't know, like just watching it, I just like it's just one of those characters that it kind of pops up a lot, that is kind of, it seems to suggest or seems to imply that effeminate equals evil.
Okay. I'm not getting the evilness from him, because I mean he's trying to honor
but he is played as a villain. He is a villain in the movie. The movie
and he is, the one being chased at the very end of this movie, and is always saying that. So I guess as a type of bad guy, yes, I can see where you're coming from. I think I just have such a love and connection to this movie that just seeing him on screen, it just makes me happy, because I'm like, oh yes, I just remember his comedic timing, and I loved it during this whole. No,
I think Paul McGann's performance is fine. Part of me is still entertained, but it just got me thinking about like kind of other characters that I'd seen like that like
I think you are right. I mean, early this time, when it came to effeminate characters, when it came to homosexual characters, just flat out in film, it was usually perceived as, oh, they're the jokey ones, or they are the villains. They're the ones that aren't being taken seriously. When we reviewed Demolition Man earlier this year, it was Bob, the character with the little gray patch in his hair. He's pointed out as just being this effeminate character, and he's villainesque, and yeah. So I mean, I think you're absolutely right. There is something there. Just again, it's just something that I love, this horse chase scene, and when he's on screen speaking in that falsetto, I just have a good time with it.
I could get what you mean. There is something naturally funny with the way Paul McGann says, "D'Artagnan, my brothers will avenge me." Yeah, there is.
And then the whole slow eye opening of, oh no, what? Come back, horse.
Yes. I like kind of going on to the horse chase that happens there. There is a bunch of beats that I do like within that horse chase. Like, so Gerard has like 4 other brothers, and they're all chasing D'Artagnan. And one of the brothers is knocked off his horse by a woman who just kind of happens to be hanging from out of an attic. And then there's another one that, like, his horse bumps into a ladder in kind of almost comic slow motion. Like the guy kind of falls off the ladder, kind of whoop, 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 whoop.
Yep. And then there's another one where I think it's some type of mill or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Kind of pushes it, and the weight that's on the other side that's balancing it comes around and smacks him in the head. It's a fun chasing, and we get a score here that is very repetitive. Michael Kamen, who did the music for this film, we have I mean, you can feel it in the strings and in the horns playing the da 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 da, but it keeps repeating it.
That is true. The thing I was thinking when watching this movie, just because you'd been on like the Backdraft episode as well, was that much like the Hans Zimmer score for Backdraft, this is another movie where if you close your eyes, you can still tell what's happening in the movie, because it like thuds you over the head so much of like, an action scene is happening, Tim Curry's doing something evil, romance is happening. You're just like, oh yeah, okay.
Yep, absolutely. And then I pointed this out in my review of this on my channel, and I want to point it out here because I noticed this as a kid. And it's never left my brain, and it actually still bothers me to this day. There are cuts in this horse chase, particularly at the very end here, when it's just Gerard and D'Artagnan, and they're riding through the woods, and they're coming up on this low-hanging tree, this whole low-hanging log, and they have to jump over it. So they have to stand up on the back of their horse and jump over the log and land back on their horse. There are cuts in here, I think it's like 2 or 3 times, where we cut and we see the stunt double of Chris O'Donnell or whoever it is on the horse, and the hilt, the gold hilt of his fencing sword. That's one of my favorite swords in cinema. It's gone. It's missing. And you can see the hilt, the sheath is limp. It's just hanging there. And then it cuts back and we see the hilt is there, the sword is in. It kept cutting back and forth. I noticed it when I was, I would have been 3 or 4 at this time, and I notice it now as an adult, and it drives me crazy still.
Yeah, right. I wasn't paying attention to that as much. I suppose I was paying more attention to the obvious stunt double shots.
Oh my God, go back and watch it. And I think in my review on my channel, I took screenshots of it. Okay. It's so blatantly obvious, and it angered me so much as a kid because I loved swords, and whenever there were swords on screen, so don't take away the sword.
Don't take away. Okay. Oh, do you want to know something else kind of fun? Just kind of talking about the horse riding and the sword play and stuff like that. So apparently, all the guys, meaning Chris O'Donnell, Kiefer Sutherland, Oliver Platt, like the Musketeers, went on a hardcore Musketeers boot camp for 6 weeks, where they learned swordplay and they learned how to ride a horse and all that kind of stuff like that. And Charlie Sheen did none of that because he was still filming Hot Shots Part 2, so he got to skip all that. And that's why Charlie Sheen mainly just punches people.
Wow, I think, okay. I've never realized I don't see him. You really don't see him sword fighting in this movie. It's all just like a tight close-up of his face.
Yeah, you don't see him on the horse much either, really.
No.
That's why.
Hey, I mean, the boot camp for Hot Shots Part 2, shooting bows and arrows with rubber chickens.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
It's its own boot camp.
Yeah, it's definitely its own boot camp for sure.
But D'Artagnan is able to jump over the log and escape the chase of Gerard. So this whole section comes to an end, and then we shift back to the palace or at least the courtyard of the palace of the King of France, where Roquefort kind of comes out, and all of the Musketeers are assembled in front of him, and he says the Musketeers are all disbanded because the king needs you all for the coming war with England. So you all need to burn and unsheath your swords and give up everything of being a musketeer so that you're able to fight for us. That's the mindset or the lie that's being told to them, so that they can all disband, and Cardinal Richelieu's guards are going to be the personal guard of the king going forward. So again, it's Tim Curry, it's Richelieu kind of extending his reach of power over the kingdom of France. And all of them do agree, because Roquefort does say if any one of you declines this, all of you will be, I guess, considered treasonous and will all be shot or whatever.
Arrested is
arrested. They do love saying arrested in this movie.
Yeah. I was also going to mention I liked Captain Rockford's ironic use of all for one and one for all. I also love that obviously Stephen Herek's direction to Michael Wincott is like, just be exactly like you were in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Just like, see that Guy of Gisborne character you played in that movie 2 years ago? The exact same thing is what we want.
Just do the exact same thing, except now you have an eye patch and a little tiny goatee. That's it.
That's the only difference.
But this, yeah, you're right. This is the first time we hear the famous Three Musketeers line, all for one and one for all. And it's being said by the villain, or at least our secondary villain of this film. So interesting. But we come to find out there are three Musketeers who didn't show up to the ceremony to, I guess, get rid of their Musketeer guard. And that are three Musketeers by the name of Athos, Pathos, and Aramis. Athos played by Kiefer Sutherland, Porthos, Oliver Platt, and Aramis by Charlie Sheen. There's also a fun little scene there where we do get Roquefort and Richelieu, confirming with each other of, I love your use of the Musketeer line, all for one and one for all. God, I just love Richelieu. I love Tim Curry in this movie.
Yeah. We'll definitely discuss further the greatness of Tim Curry as Richelieu. And also, shame on me for not looking up this ahead of time. I have done research on the episode, as I can tip by the Musketeers boot camp fact. But I did not look up who did the costume designing, because by God, the robes that Richelieu that he's wearing is practically a character in and of itself.
Oh my God, yes. When he walks down a hallway, this silk cape just expands the entire width of the hallway and takes up the entire thing. It is beautiful. It is gorgeous. And hell, even the tunics of the Musketeers and Roquefort's outfit here is pretty freaking spectacular.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The costume designing in this movie is great.
I worked for an antique shop, and they had it wasn't one from this movie, but they rented out costumes and things like that, and they did have a Musketeer tunic that did look very similar to the one in this movie. The costumes here are great too. Really, I think any period piece like this is a costumer's dream. Just to do research and be like, oh my God, just recreate what they had back then. Awesome. Yeah. So let's see here. So Richelieu finds out that these three Musketeers are still wearing the garb of the Musketeers and still calling themselves Musketeers. So orders Roquefort to go find them and bring them in and arrest them. And I believe the next scene we go to a bar in the middle of the city of Paris, where it just seems that Athos and Aramis are there, and they've already taken out the previous cardinal guards who came by and killed them all. And they're there to be arrested, and then out of nowhere, Porthos jumps to the chandelier in the middle of the room and crushes.
I think we're skipping a bit, are we not?
Did I skip something? Oh God! What happened? What happens next? Then after that, I thought we had
after the Richelieu Roquefort conversation. Yeah.
Is that where we get D'Artagnan and Constance?
Yes, this is the one. This is the romance. This is the whole romance of the movie.
Gotcha.
So yes. So like basically, D'Artagnan sees these guys who look kind of like bandits because they're dressed in black. So D'Artagnan, being the swashbuckling hero he is, he's like, oh well, I gotta get into action. So he hides and and then takes out these quote unquote bandits. But then he finds out that they are actually the bodyguards to the Queen. Not very effective bodyguards, but they are the bodyguards to the Queen. And he is told this by Constance, played by Julie Delpy, who is holding him by gunpoint, and he says, "Honest error, I did think they were bandits. I was trying to save you two ladies because I'm such a gent." And Constance is all of a flutter, like all of the women in this. It's okay. We'll get more into it in a minute. But anyway, so that happens, and then we kind of have like D'Artagnan, like going about town.
Going about town, and that's the reason why I said they literally fall in love, because he jumps off of the top of a mill or whatever onto one of those guards, and like he literally fell from above and fell from the sky, and now I'm in love with him, and that's going to determine my love for the entire movie. Like, we don't see them together at all until the very end climax.
Till the very end. We get one other big scene with Constance that we'll cover in a minute. But yeah, so we basically get the character introductions before the scene you were talking about with Athos and Aramis bantering with Roquefort. Yeah. So we get all the character introductions. D'Artagnan comes into town. He is a bit of a dick to Athos, so they end up like they're going to have a duel at 12. That's what happens there. He's still being chased after by folk, so he has to escape. Once again, he jumps into some hay and then runs away and all that. And then he runs into Porthos. He spills some wine on Porthos. And then as is D'Artagnan's want, he's a bit of a dick to Porthos. So then they're having a duel at 1. And then, yes, so probably at this point we should start talking about this family-friendly movie, this kids' movie, ridiculous horniness, right? So we're introduced to Aramis, and he is giving what I've written in my notes as a erotic Bible reading, because he's reading it in a sultry fashion, and this woman is all over it. She is ready to jump him just based on this Bible reading. He has done nothing else. He is still fully clothed. He's not doing anything particularly sexual. He's just reading this Bible in an apparently super alluring voice. She starts talking about, just as soon as you started talking about original sin, and then she just wants to pounce on him. But then her husband interrupts all that, and he has to jump out the window. And then he lands on D'Artagnan and apologizes for it. But again, as is D'Artagnan's want, he's a bit of a dick to him. So they're having a duel at 2. But kind of cutting back to the first scene, like, it is ridiculous. All of the women in this movie, this is such a male fantasy movie, all of the women in this movie are ridiculous. They're all in heat, and it takes the mere word, the merest sentence from one of the Musketeers, or the merest glance of their eye, and they're all kind of suddenly talking in this breathy voice, and like all over them, just give me it now,
Is it, must have been some repression going on, or something like a king order that said no one should have sex ever. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but whenever these 3 guys show up, the women in their low-cut corsets just throw themselves at these Musketeers. I don't think it's out of the norm for there to be people in this world, in particular people in small town the United States, who would get a little aroused by hearing the scripture being read.
Yeah, all right. I'm not going to argue with that.
Right. But yeah, here I think it's hilarious that it's Charlie Sheen who's showing restraint with this woman. I mean, yes,
that's true.
He is delivering it in a very sensual and sultry way, or the scripture, reading it to her. But he's the one there who, like you said, he's fully clothed and he's just standing back. He's the one who pushes back and says, "Madam, I'm here to teach the word of God." And she's like, "Oh, I'm just sorry. You said original sin. Please go on. We also have to cut back to the meeting with Porthos and how he was given the sash that was ruined by that wine that was spilled on him. He was given that sash by the Queen of America.
Yes, it is established throughout the movie that Porthos, as much as he has some fame and notoriety, talks up that notoriety and is a bit of a bullshitter.
I just love his retort to D'Artagnan when he unsheaths his sword and is, like you said, being a dick. D'Artagnan is a major dick in this movie. Porthos's response is, "Okay, little pimple, meet me at the whatever it is, Luxembourg at 1:00 and bring a long wooden box."
Yeah, I mean, thank God we have an entertaining supporting cast, because D'Artagnan's main powers in this movie are being whiny and being captured.
Really. And yeah, like I said, back when I was a kid, I thought he was cool. Now, as an adult, you're reading it like Orlando Bloom in the Pirates films. You're just putting so much effort into these lines, or at least you're trying to deliver them as heroic as possible, and it's falling flat like crazy. Yeah, was this a big thing back then? I don't know if you did any research, but was it like, God, you looked at me the wrong way, I'm gonna duel you now? Was that the thing to do? Let's go fencing.
Yeah. I mean, like, in terms of this movie is very much its own thing. Like, it's not. We should not connect it too much with either the source novel or any sort of historical accuracy whatsoever. All that should be thrown out the window. It takes lots of liberties, both with history and with the original work that is based on. So we should just throw all that out. Well, so again, in terms of this movie's lustiness, we cut on to a scene of Richelieu being sleazy with Queen Anne. Although at least this kind of sleaziness is kind of generally viewed negatively by the movie, unlike the other sleaziness that goes into the film, which is viewed entirely without any judgment. But so that's, and it does feel, because like I did look up Gabrielle Anwar's age, and she was 23 when this movie was made, but she looks younger, and like obviously Tim Curry was like in his 40s at the time, so it kind of comes off creepy. And also, yes, in terms of this movie's lustiness, basically the king is angry about he comes in and he's angry about the Musketeers announcement. He did agree to the disbanding of the Musketeers, but he wanted to make the announcement himself. And that sternness and that standing up for himself, like the Queen Anne gives him a glance like she's just about to orgasm. Any show of manliness in this movie, like every woman is just like, oh.
You're so right. You're like, oh my God, you're being authoritative. But yeah, that was their whole conversation before the king comes in was, I was given to the king basically from her father, and they haven't really shared any connection at all, the Queen Anne and the king. So to kind of see him, and King Louis was really young at this time in his reign. He's a little boy that Richelieu at least looks at him as. So to see him kind of have that authoritative position and to kind of use his power to make a point to someone who definitely has power in Richelieu, yeah, you can tell it's kind of rubbing her the right way. I can
certainly see.
It's a little tiny. You're right. It's a little tiny head turn. It was like, okay, I like him now. But there is still the awkward ending of that scene where Richelieu leaves the room, and then the king and queen, they look at each other, and the king kind of like shuffles quickly off, like, I don't know what to do or talk to girls.
Yeah. Poor kid. I did look up that as well. The actor who played the king, Hugh O'Connor, was only 18 when this movie was made.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Does he have that big of a nose in real life, or was that prosthetics? Do you know?
Looking at a picture of him now, it looks like it's pretty much his real nose.
Wow. I thought that was, again, I thought this was like a Disney Americanization, and this is, a French king that maybe has a big nose, and maybe that was a decision they did.
I mean, maybe they deliberately cast somebody with a big nose.
Maybe they did. I don't know. But yeah, just watching it this time, I'm like, wow, your nose is very long. I don't know.
But if you look up a picture of Hugh O'Connor, that's his real nose.
That is his real nose. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Well, good for him, I guess. You know what they say about men with big noses? A lot of boogers, I guess. I guess.
I don't know why you turned into Groucho Marx there, but
I don't know. I don't know where that came from.
I can see about guys with big noses, yeah.
Yeah, you see? Maybe I was thinking of the mouse guy from Dick Tracy.
Okay.
Didn't he have I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Richelieu, leaves after being scolded by the king, as rightfully so. But he's talking with Roquefort about how this young boy is getting more confidence, and we need to take him out as quickly as possible. Just kind of a nice, brief little scene there to remind the audience and the people that, hey, these are the bad guys. And then we cut to D'Artagnan coming to the dueling location, and Athos, Porthos, and Aramis are coming along as well, all draped in several tunics, I guess.
Yeah. So in between that scene of Richelieu talking to Roquefort and the scene of D'Artagnan arriving at the duel, that's in between that's where the scene that you were talking about happens in the bar.
That's where the bar scene is. Wow, I got it mixed around. Okay, I apologize.
It's all right.
So Roquefort brings Richelieu, the Cardinal's guards, with him because the original crew that they had sent did not return, and they show up to this dark pub, and there's Athos and Aramis kind of just sitting there cleaning their pipes, drinking ale, whatever they're doing. The previous guards have been all murdered, and they're talking about how Roquefort used to be a musketeer until he was excommunicated for conduct unbecoming of a musketeer. I don't think we ever find out what that conduct is, but he was a bad musketeer, and now he's
no, we do find out. Well, we find out because it all connects. It kind of doesn't make sense, but it all connects. We'll explain later.
Okay, you'll explain it to me, because I must have missed that then, and I've missed it for my entire life, I guess. But yeah, Porthos is hiding up in the rafters. He jumps to the chandelier in the middle of the ceiling. It comes crashing down. It takes out all of the Cardinal's guards except for Roquefort, and all three of them are there, basically saying, "You go back to Richelieu, and you tell him that, hey, we're going to continue doing our duty, no matter what you say, and no matter how many men you send towards us." A nice kind of defiant to the overall power there, and the emasculating of Roquefort before our eyes.
Absolutely. And even more emasculated by the fact that Porthos points out that his surname is also the name of a smelly cheese.
Yes. What was it? Crap. But yeah, he's like, isn't that some kind of smelly cheese?
Yeah. Roquefort, isn't it some sort of stinky cheese?
Yeah, that's it. And then we cut to the dueling location. Athos is already there waiting for D'Artagnan as he shows up, and then Porthos, Aramis arrive later, and then they all take off their coats, their coverings, to reveal that, hey, they are musketeers. And that's been the whole reason why D'Artagnan is going to Paris, is because he wants to be a musketeer like his father was. His father was murdered in the line of duty trying to protect the king. So we have, again, like I mentioned at the start of this, we have this kind of princess bride Star Wars type thing, where it's like everything's for my father and to continue on like my father. kind of the whole motivation behind D'Artagnan. But they're about to duel, and then more of the Cardinal's guards show up. And it's at this point, and Porthos, Aramis Athos calls it out. I get all of them mixed up. Athos calls it up that only a fool would try to arrest us twice in one day. And that's the very first line that the Cardinal soldier says is, all of you are under arrest. There's a nice little aside like, yep, they're fools. So they're all there to arrest these three musketeers, and D'Artagnan says, no, I want to be one of you guys. There's four of us here. And Porthos has a great little line here, like, of course we're planning on resisting. Just give us a moment, okay?
Yeah.
They have their whole little like football huddle, and they're about to go over. Here's what we're gonna do, and they all turn around, they unsheath their swords, and says, "Now we are prepared to resist you." And we have,
which is great. It's one of the many great Oliver Platt flourishes in this movie. He gets all the best lines in this film, apart from, again, him and Richelieu get all the best lines.
Yep, it's one of the best introductions, I think, to a fight, at least that I remember. And then we have a couple of minutes here of just kick-ass, fun, sword swashbuckling fight. And I believe...
Yes, we do. Although there is a kind of weird thing about this scene, and I don't know, it's a $30 million movie. I can't imagine that they ran out of budget or whatever, but for some reason, the lead Cardinal Guard, the one who says, like, you're under arrest, and the one who is killed by D'Artagnan as he's kind of pushed off a kind of bit of castle wall, is played by Paul McGann, who also plays Gerard.
Really?
Yes, but he's got he looks very
that.
different because, like, obviously he's got like kind of contact lenses and he's not like Gerard's obviously given that kind of pallid makeup and stuff like that. So he's done up quite differently, and I think he's maybe given a bit of a fake nose as well. He looks quite different, but you can definitely tell it's him. And then I was looking for it in the credits, and it was like, yeah, Paul McGann plays two characters in this film.
Oh,
the lead guard, who's called Jussac, and Gerard as well. And I don't know why.
I was today years old when I've seen this movie so many freaking times. This just blew my freaking mind. I'm sorry. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of him like, you're right. It is him. Just put a goatee on him.
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe it was because that character, the head guard, is the one that D'Artagnan takes. Maybe it was kind of like a sparring situation, or maybe like they went through the fencing boot camp and they had good chemistry, and maybe I'm just kind of
it's as good an explanation as any, but it just
I love it when like childhood stuff is revealed when you're in your 30s. Like, oh my God, my childhood's a lie, but that's awesome. Yeah, but so all of the Musketeers and D'Artagnan are able to conquer the Cardinal's guards, and they're all killed. I think this is when we get our first little Porthos has the awesome devices scene where he whips out the blade that splits into three different ones and is able to
and then cuts a sword in half.
Sword in half. Yep, love it. But they're saying like, hey, D'Artagnan, we like you. You're not joining us, but hey, I like your candor, sir. But D'Artagnan is there saying, well, what about the Musketeer code? All for one, one for all. And Athos says, Musketeers are just a dream. And they ride off. They ride off into the sunset. And D'Artagnan gets back up on his horse. And here comes Roquefort with a bunch of Cardinal guards who are, I guess for whatever reason, they don't come with the first grouping of Cardinal soldiers. I'm starting to realize that the plan of Roquefort is to kind of send pawns in to die, and
yes,
like they all just don't come in at once. I don't get it. Yeah, but they're there. D'Artagnan tries to combat them because he's talking about long live the Musketeers, and Roquefort knocks him off his horse, and he's knocked out, and he's captured and taken to the prisons underneath the palace of the King of France. And it's there that Roquefort takes the golden-hilted sword that was D'Artagnan's father's musketeer sword. Again, love this. I love this sword. I want this sword. I've always wanted this sword. It's here that we kind of have a hint that Roquefort knows D'Artagnan's father, because he's seen that sword before. It's a little detail that we have not mentioned yet, but Roquefort is missing an eye. And we come to find out a little bit later, but we can talk about it now, is that eye was cut out of his head by D'Artagnan's father. And Roquefort was the one to slay him, which kind of makes the scene all the more tension-y, I believe. If am I wrong on that one?
No,
I got it right. Yeah.
No.
Okay. But yeah, so he leaves and D'Artagnan's locked up. He's able to escape and put on the prisoner guard's outfit and kind of maneuver his way, trying to escape. And while he is trying to escape, he notices a hooded figure go into a room with Cardinal Richelieu. And he is able to get to the door and listen in. And this is where we get the introduction of Rebecca de Mornay to the film as Milady de Winter, who is a consultant of the Duke of Buckingham.
Yeah,
is
like
that
a kind of
role?
secret agent.
Yeah. Some messenger from the Duke of Buckingham. And she's talking with Richelieu about assassinating the King of France, and the Duke of Buckingham and Cardinal Richelieu will rule both kingdoms as one. And there is a message or a treaty that Richelieu gives to Milady de Winter, who is going to take it on a ship, which is coming Tuesday, I believe they say, to the Duke of Buckingham for him to sign. And this is treaty to, combine kingdoms or whatever. It's all done in the very evil scope of the movie by killing the King of France. And D'Artagnan is captured again by Roquefort, is seen again listening in, and he's taken before Richelieu, and we find out that D'Artagnan probably heard something that he probably shouldn't have, so we're going to send him to be executed and beheaded.
Yeah, just before we get more into that, I did want to point out, because I feel like I should point out every time the horniness of this movie. We get more Richelieu being really sleazy and trying to grab Milady's breast, and then she threatens to cut off his knackers, and that's quite funny.
Yes, that's our introduction to de Mornay as Milady de Winter. She is cloaked. Richelieu walks up to her and just slowly, in the sleaziest way you could think possible, lifts up her cloak and just reveals this beautiful corset. And the camera is just perfectly angled in position to just look down the cleavage hole, I guess.
There is so many cleavage shots in this family film. So many cleavage shots. I just can't understand how they got away with it. To be fair,
this is the tame one.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, it gets much worse, but it's just PG, guys.
Yeah, that's right. This is PG. I don't know. There's some executive that probably doesn't work at Disney anymore. That's like, we need cleavage, just with a cigar and smoke filling the room that he's in, watching the dailies.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I think there's some Roger Corman movies I've seen less cleavage in.
Right. I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to make this just a very male-heavy audience movie.
I think it's very clearly aimed at, young teens, young male teens.
Yep. Yeah. But so Richelieu, finds D'Artagnan and is like, he probably heard something that he wasn't supposed to, so we'll send him to be executed and do a public beheading, because it's been a while since we had one of those, right, guys? That was a little bit of Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yes.
We'll have a wedding or a hanging. Either way, we'll have a lot of fun, huh? But yeah, so D'Artagnan's being
I think this episode has kind of been possessed by the ghost of Groucho Marx. It's just
I think he has. It's the mood that I'm in today. I don't know.
We'll just do the rest of the episode like this.
You see that cleavage over there? That's fantastic. Okay.
I love the Marx Brothers, but enough of that.
Okay, we'll try not to do any more throughout this entire thing.
We'll just talk about the movie instead of doing all this Marx Brothers shtick.
The audience loves this. This is what they come here for.
It's what we're known for.
It's what we're known for, and we don't get yelled at in the comments at all for it.
Okay. Reel it back in. Right. I do want to say, though, cutting back to the movie, talking semi-seriously, I guess, this is one of the things, I've seen it in 1,000 swashbuckling adventures. I mean, obviously not literally, but there's dozens of films that I've watched that has this, the classic Robin Hood escape, where our hero is taken to the gallows either to be hung or to be beheaded. And then at the last minute, it is revealed to him that the executioners are actually his friends and allies. And then they all reveal themselves to the audience, and then they kick ass, and then they escape. I've seen it in a bunch of movies, and it entertains me every single goddamn time.
And it entertains because it's our main character who is literally inches from death, and to see our main character kind of just springboard to life and to safety. Yeah, it's an overdone a trope in films, but you know what? You're right. Every time it happens, you just throw your fist up in the air and you go, yeah. And I love the way that it happens here. We get the slight little aside from Aramis, who's the preacher, the hooded preacher, or whoever, and says the Three Musketeer line, all for one and one for all. And Porthos says, this axe was a gift to me from, I forget who it's from, but it's basically like the Queen of America or someone like that.
Yeah, so somebody else, some other fictional character.
I just love it. His fame is, again, represented and is stretched far and wide. And Aramis opens up the Bible and reveals a pistol cut out in the middle of it. I freaking love that. And
yeah, that's a great beat. Like, I love that moment as well. I remembered that moment from when I was a kid as well, of him pulling out the gun from the hollowed out Bible. It's cool.
And then after he shoots it, the smoke is still coming out of the gun. He does the little crucifix cross. Like, perfect. Love that touch. Again, from Charlie Sheen, and I can't not laugh at that.
Man of God, Charlie Sheen.
But while this is happening, Ethos, Kiefer Sutherland, is commandeering the Cardinal's carriage with a couple of horses attached to it. So he's bringing the carriage up, and they all jump in. D'Artagnan's there steering with him, and they break free. They're running through the streets of Paris. They find that what does Pathos say? He says, "Oh, it's the Cardinal's personal snack box," or something.
Yeah. Say something like that. Also, this doesn't seem very Disney. It turns out Aramis is a socialist.
Well, he finds all of the money, that's all the gold that's hidden in this carriage, and cuts out the top of the carriage, gives it to D'Artagnan, and says, "Give it to the people, spread the wealth, give it to everyone." I think it's probably my first encounter with socialism as a young child.
he's redistributing wealth. Aramis, man of God, and socialist. And also, this is also a knock against D'Artagnan, because D'Artagnan, instead of doing the sensible thing and throwing it out handful at a time, redistributing the wealth, the best possible way that you can, he just dumps the whole thing out like an idiot.
Yeah, he doesn't spread it out over a long distance. It's just like, oh, here's one little marketplace, here's the box, now fight over it, all of you savages. Yeah, he's an instigator is what he is. Yeah. But it's here in the carriage chase, because they're being chased by the Cardinal Guards, who are basically stormtroopers at this point because they can't hit a thing. I don't think they ever land a shot at all.
Well, actually, that's the funny thing about doing the research on the movie. Read a quote from the writer of the film, David Loughrey, and he said, Hollywood has been remaking this movie for years. It's Star Wars. They're just dressed differently.
Yep. That's all it is.
So he's clearly patented it on Star Wars. And on the Star Wars connection, I've discovered that the costume designer was a guy called John Mole, who sadly died in 2017, aged 86. And he did the costume designs on the original Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Alien, and Gandhi. There you go.
He knows, Joseph Campbell archetypes here. You put all the good guys, all the good people in bright clothes, lighter clothes, and then all of your villains, you put them all in dark colors. Hell, even red, or the color red, what have you, just represents villainy. All that's represented here. You said he died in 2017?
Yeah, age 86.
86? Hey, you know what? That's not too shabby.
Yeah. And he clearly had a very, very successful career. He was obviously very good at wind-up.
Oh, yeah. Did two of the biggest movies in the history of movies. So
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, very good.
We take our hats off to you, Mr. John.
Yeah, take our feathered hats off.
Exactly. The feather hats that we wore just for this episode.
Yes. During this chariot race, or carriage race, I should say, D'Artagnan does tell the other Musketeers of what he overheard about the Lady de Winter and the treaty, the message that's going to be sent to the Duke of Buckingham, and they're going to make the plans to intercept that treaty from getting to the ship and being sent over. And again, fun chase scene here. There's a moment, I guess, kind of backing up the idea of Chris O'Donnell, not the best in this movie. Athos is seeing, I guess there's like a blockade in front of them, and the only path to keep going forward is to go to the right. So Athos says, turn here. And D'Artagnan has this one little line, what, here? Huh? Yes, here!
Yes, the right.
Come on!
I also do want to point out, so we're kind of intercutting between things, because you kind of see Richelieu talking to Rochefort, and then you cut back to the chase, and you kind of cut back and forth between a couple of things. And it's in this section of the movie, it's during this chase that we get two of the best dialogue exchanges in the movie. One with Richelieu and Rochefort, where Richelieu is saying 1,000 gold pieces to anybody who brings me the Musketeers, alive or dead. And then he makes a kind of dramatic pause and then just goes, I prefer dead. And it's the way he says it is beautiful.
Yeah, well, he's so enraged when he first says it, dead or alive, and then he collects himself, takes a pause, like you said, and then just back, and that proper Richelieu tone, that professional Richelieu tone, I prefer dead. The only way that Tim Curry could deliver it. I mean, again, he is pitch perfect in this film, and
it is only topped by the other exchange that happens during the chase, where Athos is riding the carriage, and Porthos comes up out the kind of roof of the carriage with a bottle of champagne and goes, champagne? And Athos says, we're in the middle of a chase, Porthos. And Porthos says, you're right, something red.
Again, he gets all the best comedic lines. They're fantastic.
And then he comes back with a bottle of red wine for Athos, who then just drinks the whole bottle. That's when he passes it off to D'Artagnan. It's like, no, I've got this. I'm just going to dig into this bottle of red.
Yeah. And I think it's with that little interchange that you get the sense of these guys, they've done this before. They're brothers. They've been in a situation like this before. And then there's another great line when, after the whole turn here, it's kind of a sharp turn, and Porthos kind of gets stumbled back into the carriage, and he spills the red wine on himself. And he says, "Okay, yep, next time you drive." I always thought that was
that's good.
Fun little modern day line that was thrown in there.
Yeah, that is good. And then basically, Athos sets the carriage on fire using some gunpowder and some brandy, and then shooting at the carriage that makes it burst into flames. He then rolls it down to a soldier camp that the Cardinal Guards seem to have, that just so happens to have a shitload of gunpowder in it, so then explodes the whole camp, and they manage to get away.
Yep. And we have probably the most beautiful shot of this entire film.
Oh, the wide shot where they're riding over the hill.
They're riding the hill, and all you see is we see the silhouette of these 4 people on horseback with their feathered caps on, just riding as the sun is going down in the distance. I recently watched the film the Night of the Hunter, and this is basically that shot. Just with 4 musketeers in the background. I love this shot. This has always been one that I remember from this film.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. So the scene coming up next is we've got to talk about the film's horniness again.
Oh yeah.
So we cut to a bar that like a kind of pub that Porthos and Athos and Aramis and D'Artagnan are in. We open, like, this is possibly the sleaziest shot in the movie. So we open up this shot in the pub with just a real close up of a barmaid leans down to collect a tray of some sort, and the camera practically dives into her cleavage. It's surprising she wasn't actually knocked over by the cameraman.
and that's just the opening. I mean, this entire scene keeps on going, and we get cleavage after cleavage after cleavage, all talking about the proper way to kiss a woman, right?
Well, they call it they're basically giving lessons in the wenching, not a very politically correct term.
Right.
So the thing I noted about this movie, the thing that is weird about this movie, is not that the Musketeers are booze hounds and skirt chasers. They are those things in all the 3 Musketeer movies. The weird thing about this movie is generally other 3 Musketeer movies present the 3 Musketeers as a gang who are kind of roguish anti-heroes. And despite their boozing ways, despite their skirt chasing ways, we support them because they have a moral core and they follow a code that we respect, and basically they're up against much more evil men and good for them. So that's that. In this movie, they are presented as entirely heroic, not anti-heroes at all. And instead of sanitizing their behavior, what this movie does is have them have the exact same behavior as they do in the other movies, but just not comment on it and just be like, this is all perfectly fine. There is no, even the Bond films that are, it's possibly the most sexist franchise ever made, has characters who like roll their eyes at Bond and be like, oh geez, are you doing that thing again? There's none of that in this movie. It's just like, this behavior, all good.
Yeah, in Bond you'll have those morally correct characters to be like, hey, why don't you next time you pick a meeting place, why don't you do it when you're not laying on your back? Lines like that. But yeah, here it's all just you go ahead and you I don't want to say assault, but you're basically imposing yourself on women all you want, and it's totally fine. It is totally okay. And society says that's okay because we're not going to correct. We're all just going to laugh and cheer and drink and have a good time. Keep on doing what you're doing. Yeah, it's I would say like young pubescent Caleb was okay with that, but yeah, now as an adult it's very jarring to see. The scene is very weird, and it's one of the weirdest kind of turns and pacing decisions of this film, because I think we're very heroic and we're very actiony throughout the entire thing. Here's a moment where we need to slow things down a little bit, and we get a little imposing from these male figures on these women.
Yeah, and it's kind of presented, as we've kind of discussed, in this movie universe, as long as you present as manly and you're doing manly things, then women will just fall at your feet. And then, there's no need for consent or anything, because they just, obviously, they'll just immediately love you because you're manly and you can sword fight and you can do manly things. And yeah, it's I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say that when I was watching this, when I was like 13 or whatever, I wouldn't have thought of it. I probably would have just been like, oh, those are attractive women on screen, it just wouldn't have crossed my mind. But yes, watching it now as a 35-year-old man, this it's problematic. This whole film's attitude towards women is
It's not good. Yeah,
not good.
And it's represented here just in the blocking itself. Porthos has a woman draped across his lap, and when D'Artagnan kind of catches after he catches the cleavage, catches the eyes of the barmaid who came over with his drink, all of a sudden Porthos is like, ooh, you're getting an erection over there, aren't you? Well, let me tell you how to kiss a woman. And the woman that's on his lap, he just straight up goes, here's how you do it. And he does it in a very aggressive and wild and crazy manner. Whereas Aramis is on the other side of the table, and he's acting very sophisticated and thinking that, oh no, words are way more powerful than actions. Here, let me demonstrate. Goes over to the same woman and recites some poetry to her, and immediately, like you said, he does it in a very seductive and manly fashion, and that just turns her gears, and she throws herself at Aramis, kind of competing with each other. Here's actions, and then here's words. There you go, D'Artagnan. Go over to that maid that you caught eyes with, and you see what works on her. And we get one hilarious attempt at poetry from D'Artagnan. As I think he says, as morning hues of sunset swept, he can't remember the last word until Aramis says, fire, it's fire. Yeah. Fire caresses your poisoned face, and then realizing that, nope, I'm losing it here, just immediately goes up and kisses her. Yeah, this is, like we've been saying it all episode, but this is, quote, a man's movie, end quote, and it's, if you do manly things, that makes you heroic and awesome here. The only one who's not partaking in all of this is Athos, who's kind of drinking in the corner all by himself, and D'Artagnan walks over to him and asks him why he's being a loner, he's being an introvert, why are you socially distancing? And he tells the story about a woman that he was in love with but bared the mark. I forget exactly what the mark is called, but
I think it's the fleur de lure.
Oh yes, the fleur de lure. And I guess if you're marked with that, it means that you're marked for death. You are supposed to be executed. And this was the reason why this woman, I guess, left his life many, many years ago. Is that the reason why he became a musketeer? Did that happen before?
I think that's the reason why he became a musketeer. It's implied. Yeah. He doesn't actually say that, but it's implied that once he renounced his title after asking for her execution, because he finds out he's got this mark, which means she's a murderer, and he couldn't stand the thought of that, and and then he renounces his title, and then he becomes a musketeer. He doesn't say that final part, but it's implied.
Yeah, and then Pathos comes over, falls through the table, and Athos punches him out jokingly, of course, because again, they're all still lovely brothers. And we go to the next day. They're running through the fields and they hear whistling in the background. Because from the nearby tower, there is a cannonball being fired at them. That's where the line, "I hate cannonballs," comes from.
Yes.
Because Richelieu has sent out the orders, like you said, I want those musketeers dead or alive. People from the Cardinal, from Richelieu, who are part of his team, who want that bounty. So they go on the run. They split up.
Oh, yeah, because they've sent out a whole flotilla of pigeons to every,
all through the countryside.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's right. We have that scene with Richelieu, and it's one of his best lines. He sends out the pigeons. It's the sunset, beautiful shot, and then we zoom in on Tim Curry's unique face, and he says the musketeer line, "All for one and more for me." This performance is one of the best villain performances in action movies. I will fight anyone on it. It's just freaking great here.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, again, this movie was commissioned on the back of the success of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and again, I think he's been directed in such a way of being like, you see that Alan Rickman guy, you see his performance in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Can you do exactly that, Tim Curry, please?
You got to tell me when you do Prince of Thieves on here. That's one of my favorites too. I'll cut your heart out
whenever
Loxley. It's a little hurt more.
My favorite line from him, I think, is when he storms out the room and then comes back into the room and goes, "And cancel Christmas."
Yes.
That's just it's something always stuck into my mind. I was just like, so random.
Yep. I think that movie did come out around Christmas time too, or at least
could be. Yeah.
I just have connection to it at Christmas. But I remember him saying that. I'm like, no, it's Christmas. Don't do that. I want Christmas. I want presents. Oh God! Back to this film, or I guess this one. Kind of. It's basically the same movie, but with less Friar Tucks, I would say.
Yes, that is true. No Friar Tucks in this movie.
So they're on the run.
Just as much heavy drinking, though. There is a lot of heavy drinking.
A lot of heavy drinking and cleavage.
Yes.
More cleavage than Rob. But they're on the run, and D'Artagnan, they split up. D'Artagnan and Athos, they're in one pair, and they're the major pair that we follow along. Well, and actually, they split up, and then don't we cut to the Queen?
Yes, this is where we cut to the Queen. We've not seen the Queen. Well, we've not seen the Queen in a while, and we've not seen Constance since that one scene that she had with D'Artagnan. But we see them again, and they have a little bit of a chat where basically they agree that arranged marriage is okay because Anne has fallen in love with Louis on first sight, just like Constance has fallen in love with D'Artagnan on first sight. And then they both kind of pine a little bit that but what if our men don't feel the same way? Oh.
It doesn't matter, because if men do manly things in this universe, you'll love them. So as long as they're doing manly things, you'll
just keep loving them, whether they love you or not, because this film's attitude to women is just ridiculous.
As a teenager, the whole idea of love at first sight, what seemed very romantic to me and seemed like a possibility, but now as an adult, and you watch a movie like this, or you read Romeo and Juliet, and you go, "You dumbasses, you're 14."
Yeah, that's
you have your whole life to live.
That is also just on a random aside. It seems that Anne is bathing in milk.
It is. I noticed that even as a kid too. I'm like, what type of water is this? I thought it was milk when I was a kid, but I'm like, maybe it's just super soapy water. Just without the foam and bubbles. I don't know.
Had that been invented yet?
I don't know.
Queen Anne invented the bath bomb.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that was all Louis the 13th. He was He was the
Okay.
bath bomb king.
Yes. That's where almost half his fortune came from.
That's right. That's right. He's making bath bombs, and here's the country on the brink of war. Well,
England
yeah,
wants those bath bombs.
I always thought that was weird too. Like, it was just weird white, kind of whitish water, but it wasn't. It was thin as water, but it was not thick as milk. I don't know.
Yeah, because initially, when like Constance is talking to her, it looks like it could be milk, but then when she gets up out of the bath, it doesn't look thick enough to be milk. It just looks like kind of milky water, and you're just like, I don't know what it is actually.
Yeah, but with her getting out of the tub and Constance leaving to get her robe, there comes in the creepy, disgusting Richelieu from behind, puts the robe over her, and she turns around to discover that it's Richelieu. So it throws her for a loop. And here is where we get some
which
dialogue.
would be a shocker surprise if it wasn't for the balking and the music, where it's like, oh, it's super obvious that we're not seeing certain things in the frame. And also, yes, the music is evil, so the robe is going to be put on by somebody evil.
Yep, it's these low tones, these low strings. Oh yeah, some evil person is lurking in the shadows. And here is where we get the, I guess I would say, sexual tension from Richelieu to this queen. Of we know that he wants to overthrow King Louis, but here is where we get the idea of his plan of, I want to overthrow the king and I want to take you as my queen. I don't want to be alone. I want you to be with me. So kind of putting it into the queen's ear that, he's maybe not as confident, or he's kind of in over his head as a king, and maybe he just needs a stronger ruler. France needs a stronger ruler here. And then he leaves from there, and then we cut back to D'Artagnan and Athos kind of running through the woods. So we cut back to D'Artagnan and Athos, and they're riding through the forests. And here we have a little kind of communication between them, where it's learned that Athos knew D'Artagnan's father, and he was a good man, until they are ambushed by the... about to say...
It seems like... See, this is where the plot kind of becomes a little confusing in terms of things not quite adding up. Athos says that he knew his father by reputation. He didn't really know his father, but he knew him by reputation.
Right, that's right. Never met him, but knew him by reputation. So maybe I was
going to say... then, given the reveal later, kind of doesn't add up, but we'll get to that.
Right. Which, I'm trying to think of, maybe they were stationed in other places, but I mean, the Musketeers, they were supposed to just guard the king, and the king is always in one location. I don't know.
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. Something doesn't add up here. But they're talking, and Athos is trying to, I don't know, have like a little fatherish moment, I think, with D'Artagnan, a little bit, until the random bounty hunters of the cardinal come in, and they start shooting. I think they shoot Athos's horse, so he's down, and they're pinned down. But they need to get to the ship to intercept the treaty, the message. So Athos says, "D'Artagnan, you go, and I'm going to stay here." And another great line reading from Chris O'Donnell after he gives the guns, all of his spare pistols and everything, to Athos. He says this one line as a quick little aside. He says, "I'll never forget you." What? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, pal. Why don't you just keep going? And it's assumed that Athos is, this is the end of him. D'Artagnan is able to escape on horseback, and we just zoom very slowly in on Sutherland's face, and it's looking like this is the end for him. And then after this, we cut back to the palace, right?
Yes. So
Yes.
after this, we cut back to the palace, and the king is doing some fencing practice. And then Richelieu dramatically walks into the fencing practice because he dramatically walks into every room he walks into. And then Richelieu does a hilarious thing where he lies by telling the truth. So he basically outlines his entire plan to overthrow the king to the king's face, but does it in an ironic voice, as if, wacky people are saying that, but of course that's not true.
And I think he just knows that the king is just so young and naive that he could reveal his entire plot, because he's also there for damage control, because I'm sure he thinks absolutely that the queen told the king of their little encounter in the bathroom with the bathrobe and things, so to kind of paint her, or at least discredit her with maybe some bad things that she may have said about him. Yep, here he comes in, and he's like, "Yep, yes, I've heard the rumors too. There's someone is supposed to assassinate him and then ascend to the throne. Oh, come now, king." And of course, he's naive to believe him, but he's also encouraging him to keep the birthday celebration, the public appearance of the king's birthday celebration happening, because that is a requirement for his plan to assassinate him, which we'll find out here in a couple minutes. And then we cut to D'Artagnan, who it's nighttime, and it appears he's been riding for a very long time, and he passes out, falls off his horse, and then we slowly dissolve into a little scene a little bit later of a carriage picking him up, and it's Milady de Winter, Rebecca de Mornay, pops out. And here we get more horniness. Ooh, this attractive man who's passed out on the side of the road, put him inside with me.
Indeed. And then
we get to the scene that, again, young little Caleb was loved as a kid. It's definitely blatant here, realizing as an adult, but we dissolve again into the next scene. D'Artagnan is shirtless, laying in a bed, cradled by someone, and he looks over, and the camera is directly bird's eye view above de Mornay's cleavage in that corset. And it lingers there for a good minute or two.
Indeed it does. And it's kind of heavily implied in the imagery of like him waking up and it being like heaven. 'Cause apparently, like heaven to all men is a cleavage, according to this film. And because she's all dressed in white. They're in a bed, and the bed they're in, behind the bed, there is a literal painting of cherubs. It's ridiculous.
And I think the music, from what I recall, is very like angelic. It's like,
yes, it's a heavenly kind of all kind of harpy string, like yeah.
And it's like he's coming to, and he's succumbed to it. He's like, yes, okay, I am in heaven, awesome. But then the realization hits, oh wait, Tuesday midnight, the ship, I gotta get out of bed. And it looks like all of his clothes were taken off, so I guess we'll leave that to the listener and to realize what happened to them. But it's here that they have a conversation where Milady de Winter realizes, this man that they picked up is actually here to stop her. And as she realizes this, she works her way closer and closer into D'Artagnan to where they lock lips, and she seduces him, and while doing that, pulls out a knife from her hair, tries to stab him. And as they have a little scuffle, he pulls off kind of the left shoulder part of her dress to reveal a marking of a fleur de lure. And we begin to realize that this is the mark of death that Athos was talking about in the bar. And this woman is the woman that Athos was pining over, was talking about while drinking.
Indeed. And also, this scene perfectly exemplifies the movie's problematic attitude to women, because it has such a kind of double standards here of not 20 minutes beforehand, we have D'Artagnan forcing himself on a lady who apparently is loving it. And then, when Milady tries to seduce him, he's all kind of coyish and kind of like, what? No, sex? I've never heard of such a thing. Oh, give me my shirt back. Oh, wicked temptress.
Right, yeah. When the woman tries to do it, ooh, it's naughty and it's slutty. But when the guy does it, hey, it's another notch on his belt. I mean, if this doesn't represent the way that Hollywood has worked for the last 100 years, I mean, what else does? But I mean, yeah, absolutely. This is a double standard at its finest here in this.
Yes. But Milady is thoroughly schlut-seamed in this movie.
Yes, undeservedly, I think.
Yeah, no, like Milady gets treated harshly in this movie, and we'll get into that further soon.
Yep. So the guards come in. They tie D'Artagnan up, or at least they handcuff him, and they're going to take him with them on the ship, which is a pretty smart plan, other than killing him. Which I don't know.
That is true. That is true. Again, because D'Artagnan's an idiot and could have got away, once he kind of disarmed Milady, but he just immediately gets captured again, because one of Milady's bodyguards, Parker, knows martial arts for some reason, and because martial arts are cool, and he gets his ass kicked and he's immediately recaptured. That's his whole kind of shtick, he just he frees himself from capture and then immediately just gets recaptured again. It's our hero, everyone.
Our main protagonist, the one with the hero's journey in this. So they're about to leave, and their way is blocked because this other man shows up, who is the one that put the mark on De Winter, because she murdered his brother. I forget the character's name. Not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember the character's
name either. He's not integral to the plot at all.
No, he really isn't integral to anything other than this little segment here. So it doesn't really matter.
But they make it out the back entrance, and they make it to the ship, and it looks like they're about to cast off. They're walking up to the ship's captain and asking, hey, let's get going. And here's the captain is dead.
Yeah, and it's one of those funny movie moments where the guy's clearly dead, but the henchman shakes him as if he's just kind of asleep or something. Like, hey, wake up.
Yep, the eyes are crossed and kind of rolled into the back of his head. Come on, Captain. But all of them, all the crew members are dead. Or as Aramis would say right after that, well, not all of us. And the three oh, wow.
The three amigos? Did you nearly say the three amigos? I almost
said the three amigos.
Yes, by a surprising turn of events, Chevy Chase, Martin Short, and Steve Martin suddenly are in the movie, having previously known people.
They show up on the boat and they go, my little buttercup has the sweetest smile. Yep. No, it's the Three Musketeers,
Three Amigos mashup that you never knew you wanted.
I kind of want it now. I don't know about you.
I'm for it.
So Aramis and Porthos are there taking out all of the Lady de Winter's henchmen, except for Parker, who, like you said, knows kung fu and has a blade that kind of splits into two, and he does some pretty cool kung fu-ish looking stuff and tries to intimidates Porthos, but Porthos kind of throws it back at him. And it's one of my favorite moments. I remember seeing it in the trailer and always remembered it from this movie, where he mimics Parker by just kind of going blah, 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 and cuts a rope, and Parker like falls to his death, or falls into the ocean.
Yeah.
Never see Parker again after that.
Never seen again. Yeah, it's kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark-esque, you know.
Yeah. There's also a great line or a great moment where two of the henchmen go up to Porthos and are about to fight him and stop themselves and say out loud, "It's Porthos the pirate!" and scream and throw themselves off the boat.
And Porthos turns to D'Artagnan and says, "I told you I was famous."
Yep.
I have to say, like you, one of the scenes that's always stood out for me in this movie was that scene of like Porthos, like the guy spinning the swords, and then Porthos doing the kind of mock spinning the swords, and then just cutting the rope so he drops down. It's one of the ones that's always been kind of emblazoned in my memory.
Yeah, it's the perfect button, really on this whole ship fighting scene, and it was the perfect button on the trailer. I think it's the last part.
Yeah,
but yeah, so that really ends the fight on the ship. De Winter has made it off and is running away, seemingly going to escape. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just because it's okay, Athos arrives on horseback and stops Milady de Winter, realizing that it's Milady de Winter, and is kind of conflicted with, oh my God, it's my long lost love, but it's also, he's realizing that she's the spy and wants the treaty. She's refusing. And there's this back and forth of us, the audience, feeling about what's going to happen here. Is he going to shoot? Is he going to let her go? What's going to happen? And then the guy that we saw briefly at De Winter's quarters or whatever,
kind of hideout.
Who was looking for her, appears, because he knew where she was going, and is now finally captured her and is now going to sentence her to death, which is what she's been marked. And I've only realized this past time watching it. Athos just shows up. The last time we saw him, he was seconds from death, and he just here.
Yeah, it's totally unexplained. He doesn't even mention how he escaped or anything, and nobody asked him. Like D'Artagnan doesn't ask him how he escaped. So it's just like, yeah, that he just did. He just killed all those men, and he got away.
Which is, plot reasons and moving forward.
Moving
That's
on.
Why.
And so, yes, we've talked about the kind of odd moment in the script that tonally doesn't fit the film, and the next bit tonally very much doesn't fit the film, because for like one scene or like two scenes, suddenly the picture seems to think that it's an Academy Award nominee, because like Athos and Milady, as played by Rebecca De Mornay and Kiefer Sutherland, they have this kind of big heart-to-heart when she's in her prison cell, and then at her execution as well, it's all played with this kind of real, kind of heavy, kind of emotional tone that the rest of the movie doesn't have, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, it's been light and breezy throughout the movie. It's going to be light and breezy again in a second, but for some reason, you're expecting me to care now. I'm not really sure that I do, although I do care to the extent that Rebecca De Mornay's character, Milady, I think is treated harshly. Like, this should be I've seen this in so many action movies where like a character who used to be bad does something good and now they're one of the good guys. But in this movie, possibly because she's a woman, that is not the case. The execution is definitely still going ahead, despite the fact that Athos interrupts the original execution, it'll still probably happen at some point. And because of that, Milady decides to unburden herself with the Cardinal's plan and then chucks herself to her death off a cliff.
And it's a character decision that still baffles me to this day, of why she would just all of a sudden turn. I mean, she's about to be beheaded by the executioner, and then Athos, we talk about Chris O'Donnell's acting here. Let's just do the Kiefer Sutherland. No! and has a little tussle with the executioner and just asks for forgiveness from de Mornay, and de Linter grants it, and then that makes her decide to tell him and then kill herself. Yeah, it's a character decision that I don't know, and this whole part, you're right, the energy, the seriousness here, all of it dips down. The color saturation on screen is darker. We get a lot more grays and blues, dark blues. This feels very much like the beginnings of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, where Robin was coming home from the war, and he sees his father, his place all burned up, and his father burned alive or whatever. But yeah, she jumps to her death, commits suicide, and again the whole thing with the brother being killed and getting justice for that's done. And Athos stands up and says, "Hey, the king's going to be killed and assassinated at his birthday party. We have work."
Yes,
and we go back.
And he's
Disney
like pretty cheerful by the next kind of scene. Once they get into the kind of final battle, this is apparently the love of his life that he assumed was dead and has been burdened by that for such a long time. But she just grants him forgiveness, and it's like, well, okay, that's kind of ends that chapter of my life. So okay. Good to go.
Yep, this is a Disney movie, remember? Come on, guys. Yep. And that's really what happens. They get on horseback and they ride from town to town, and they shoot little messages, hidden messages into trees and doors and things like that of the people who used to be musketeers. A little message saying all for one and one for all, and that's clue to them for them to realize, like, oh, the king's going to be killed in Paris. We need to show up on that day. And then so we have a nice little montage of people pulling out all of their hidden tunics and all their hidden swords from being musketeers. And then we quickly cut to the king's celebration. People are filing into the courtyard, and the king is making his way to the balcony where they do their public appearance, and they wave to the crowd. And we see that the three musketeers and D'Artagnan are there. They're hidden, but they're looking for the spy. They're looking for the assassination, or the assassinator, the sharpshooter, whoever's going to kill the king.
The ye olde sniper.
The ye olde sniper, yes. Oh yeah, and I guess we have to mention, when we are first introduced to him, he's target practicing with paintings of the king, and Tim Curry, Richelieu, is there watching, and he says to Roquefort, "Hang this painting up in my quarters just how it is." A hole in the middle of the forehead. This guy is great. I love him.
Yes. And I love the fact as well that, it's usually just used as a general term for kind of over-the-top villains, mustache-twirling villains. Tim Curry in this movie is a literal mustache-twirling villain.
It's a glorious mustache and goatee. Like, it is perfect, down to the centimeter.
That is very true. I mean, like, his whole getup, his hair is amazing. His facial hair is amazing. As we've discussed, his robes are out of this world. It's all good.
Yes, he's fantastic. And actually, the whole big cape walking scene is going to pop up here in a second, because D'Artagnan does see the sharpshooter on the roof across the way from where the balcony is, realizing that's where it's going to go down, and he runs up to the roof very quickly at the last second and thwarts the sharpshooter's plan. The gun goes off, but it misses the king. They quickly rush the king and queen inside. D'Artagnan gets into a little scuffle with the assassinator on the roof, and Tim Curry tries to paint the three musketeers, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, who are in the courtyard. He says, "Kill those musketeers. They're here to kill the king." And they're three musketeers against what looks to be like 100 different cardinal guards. A pretty cool scene. The musketeers are in their blue tunics and all these red cardinal tunics are there unsheathing their swords, and you think all is lost until all of these people who are very comically covered up
Yes,
in
indeed.
coats or whatever run out, trying to keep themselves revealed or hidden until they all take them off and reveal that, all the musketeers that we saw in the beginning of the movie are back. It's red versus blue, good versus evil, and they have a huge ass fencing battle, which
Yeah.
I gotta say, I don't think I've ever seen at all in another film a big fencing battle with people with long swords like
yeah. Apart from other Musketeer films.
right from the 125 other interpretations of this.
Yeah, there's so many. There's so many. If people are looking for other Musketeers films, probably the best one is the 1973 Three Musketeers, directed by Richard Lester and starring Michael York, Richard Chamberlain, and Oliver Reed as Porthos. That's a real.
I will have to check that one out. That's actually intimidated me. Like, I've wanted to see other versions, but I know the 2011 one is just terrible.
I've not watched that. I've heard it's terrible, but I do like this. I remember watching the 70s one as a kid. There's a sequel to that as well called The Four Musketeers, Milady's Revenge, which has the same cast: Richard Chamberlain, Michael York, Oliver Reed.
Everyone returns. Okay, I will check that one out then. I just didn't know where to go. This has been my only version. Really. Yeah. I'll 2 hours and cleavage minutes of it. So, yep.
Yeah.
So we enter into the throne room. The king and queen, they're taken in, but they're also kind of apprehended by the cardinal's guards. And this is where we get the great cape cardinal scene. He's walking down the hallway. There's an aerial shot of him walking in. And this is where we get the whole evil plan from the cardinal. He's going to assassinate the king. He sits on the throne right in front of the king's face to rub it in. And he even mentions that, he wants the queen by his side. And Queen Anne says, "I would rather die." And again, another fantastic line from Tim Curry. "That can be arranged."
It's such a good. It's the way he says the line, and it's the way he kicks over the stool at the same time. Yes. It really makes it.
It thunders through the throne room. It's fantastic. But I mean, this is what we get. This is the whole. I guess if this was a James Bond film, this would be when James Bond is apprehended and the villain of the movie is revealing their evil plan to Bond. So he's revealing his evil plan to the king.
Yeah,
just not killing him.
Well, this is the thing. Like, this happens. I mean, this happens in Bond movies all the time as well, like you say. But this happens a bunch throughout this movie, where one of the heroes is captured, and there's plenty of opportunity to kill said hero, but because all the villains take weird dramatic pauses, none of the heroes are killed. And that's exactly what happens with the king. Roquefort takes a weird dramatic pause, because he wants to make the king's death as dramatic as possible, and then all of the musketeers come in during that pause.
Yeah, he was going to use the sword, D'Artagnan's sword, to run the king through, and I think Richelieu says the same sword that failed to protect his father, meaning the same sword that failed to protect King Louis's father. But yeah, you said the musketeers, they come barreling into the throne room. They're still fighting with the cardinal guards. Porthos does save D'Artagnan from the sharpshooter up on top with a killer crossbow shot. There's also a moment in the fight, which this is what I was thinking like this entire time. All of you are fencers. All of you fight with this long sword. There's a moment where he is fighting with someone. He ducks down and he pops up with a pistol and shoots him at point blank range. He's like, "Aha!" And I was like, why don't more of you do that? Why are you still fighting with swords back to back? just shoot the guy.
Yeah, I suppose like they only like their muskets. They only have like the one. You know,
They only have one. Yeah.
Like so they're a bit of a pain to keep reloading during battle. So like you know you can use it for like a dramatic moment, but like I don't know. That's I'm gonna try and back up some of the logic of the movie.
Yeah. But yeah, they're all fighting in. Oh, let's see what happens. Athos takes on Rockfort, and yeah, there's more back and forth. The cardinal tries to escape with the king and queen, and there is Aramis there trying or stopping, blocking their way from the hidden passages down to the dark dungeons and that big dragon boat that we saw at the very beginning of the film. He's there and they're talking back and forth, you know, you'll answer to God, very religious and dramatic lines like that. This is a nice little scene because Aramis used to be one of the cardinal's students. So this is kind of a mentor protege type confrontation, but Cardinal Richelieu has concealed a small little pistol in his sleeve and shoots Aramis, and Charlie Sheen, Aramis falls to the ground. What's the line here? Aramis says, you'll answer to God, and he shoots him, and Richelieu, again, here we go, says an amazing line of, you first, and walks away, walks over his dead body. Aramis is there, is walking up. Porthos comes over, he's shocked and saddened. He's trying to help him out, and during this, D'Artagnan comes in, saves Athos from Rockfort, and is able to get the golden-hilted sword, his father's sword, back. And now it's going to be D'Artagnan versus Rockfort, and Athos goes over to where Aramis is to reveal that Aramis is just fine. The bullet actually hit a hidden metal crucifix that he had wearing around his neck. He says the line, you see, there is a God. And I'm like, thank you, Charlie Sheen. I needed you to say that to me. Oh.
Man of God, Charlie Sheen. We can't say that enough. Man of God, Charlie Sheen.
I can't say it with a straight face.
Yeah. He's fine. So, I did want to mention that we're going slightly beyond it, but when Athos was fighting Rockfort, Rockfort stabs him in the arm, and that's the only blood you see in the movie, despite all of the death that happens in the film.
Yeah, he runs his arm through too, all the way. But yeah, it's just this little red spot that appears on his I guess white sleeve. Looks great, but it also doesn't really deter his movement at all.
No, he as we've kind of discussed, you might expect the odd wrestling reference. He sells it just for that moment, and then he does not sell it the remainder of the movie.
Which you never do in wrestling. You don't not sell a move. I mean, unless you're, I guess nowadays it would be like the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, or Alexa.
Yeah. Unless you're John Cena,
That's right. Unless you're John Cena, who can bury anyone at any point. Yep.
Well, let's not rant about John Cena, because it just takes too long, and we're already too far gone. We need to wrap this shit up.
Yeah, we do. So the three Musketeers, the original, they're running down to the dungeon after the Cardinal, and D'Artagnan, Rockfort, they're having their epic fencing fight scene, and I love this scene, or at least this fight between the two. We get the typical stereotypical score here, emphasizing every blow that they have on each other. But it's here that we get the realization that Rockfort killed D'Artagnan's father.
Dun, dun, dun.
And the Star Wars Princess Bride Inigo Montoya moment is here, finally.
Yeah. And that's what he got kicked out of the Musketeers for. Because, it's set, you said you didn't know why he got kicked out, but that's why he got kicked out of the Musketeers, for unmusketeer content. Because it's kind of described. And this is why it doesn't make sense. Because in the scene in this scene, it's revealed that he is D'Artagnan's father's murderer. In the scene where D'Artagnan and Athos are speaking, he describes that D'Artagnan's father was betrayed by a musketeer, meaning Rockfort. In the scene in the bar, right near the beginning, Roquefort kind of basically says it was your fault that got me drummed out the Musketeers, because so they were the three witnesses in the kind of trial against him about the murder of D'Artagnan's father, which doesn't make sense in the sense that Athos said he just knew him by reputation. So how could he be the witness at the trial? I don't know. Like, it doesn't quite make sense, but that's basically how I follow the thread of the movie.
All right, that's okay. I that never rang with me. I guess I can see where you're coming from. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't, the timeline does not make sense at all. But if that seems what they're going for.
Seems to be what the movie is suggesting, even though it doesn't quite add up.
Yeah, I mean, they're really here. They're going for the Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, hard hitting moment. I killed your father. Prepare to die, Princess Bride type thing.
Yeah, that's true. They even do like a kind of exact copy of the Star Wars moment where he kind of like with the lightsaber moment where he like jumps over him, and they just do the exact same thing. So they're clearly referencing Star Wars here.
And D'Artagnan is he loses his sword, and it looks like Roquefort is about to run him through, and then from out of nowhere, D'Artagnan's sword comes flying back to his hand, and he's able to run Roquefort through, finally vanquishing and getting justice for his father, because what we had seen when D'Artagnan lost his sword, Constance was just walking around, as handmaidens do during times of battle and, siege and stuff like that.
Yeah, she seems very casual, of just like she's just doing her normal duties, just being hand of the queen, and it's like, oh, there's a battle going on,
and she throws the sword for D'Artagnan, kills Roquefort, and D'Artagnan says, "I freed you, father." Constance removes the sword from his hand, and they hold hands and look at each other. And isn't that just the best romantic thing to climax to?
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's a beautiful romance that's been so cleverly seeded throughout the movie.
It reminds me of, just a very quick side note, a very quick story here. I was cast as Lancelot in the musical Camelot in undergrad. And there's this moment where I sing a song, I proclaim my love to Guinevere, and the director wanted us to hug after I sang the song. And it was like months of rehearsal, and all we did was hug there. And we eventually finally went to the director and said, can we kiss there? I mean, I really feel like we should kiss here after I proclaim my love for her, and then I hug her like she's my sister.
Yeah,
Could
right.
I
Okay,
kiss
sounds
her?
kind of weird.
Feels right. That's kind of what happens here. It's like, oh, yay, holding hands. Wonderful. It's a relationship that's meant to be. But on the other end of the story here, our three musketeers are going down to the dungeon. They have to take different routes, so they all split up. Porthos battles basically a giant Gonzalez, the Great Khali type character, who's this huge ass guy. But he's able to overcome him, and they get down to the dock, but they are just behind them, and Richelieu was able to get on the boat, and they're paddling away with the king and queen. Athos says, well, we have the treaty here, so, your plan is thwarted.
So I do want to say something here.
Yeah.
Like you've mentioned that you think this is one of the all-time great action movie villains. And I mean, like, as much as I love Tim Curry's performance here, I'm not sure where he counts for me in the pantheon of action movie villains. But it's still a good performance. However, I do think when he realizes his plan has been foiled, this is one of the greatest villain reactions of all time, because he does not react like a Scooby-Doo villain or a Bond villain or any of the other kind of action movie villains with a kind of drat, you've foiled me. Oh God, you musketeers again, or whatever it is. Like, he does not react like that. His whole plan, his whole carefully constructed plan, has completely fallen to his feet, and his reaction is a minor triviality, which is amazing.
He has lost everything, and his response is just a minor problem. I'll return. Really?
Where does this confidence come from?
I don't know. That is a good question. Where all of this confidence and power comes from, I don't know. I want some, though. He has enough to spare. What a great line.
He's not even annoyed that all these years of planning have fallen apart. It's just like, no, a minor triviality. I will come back twice as strong. Will you? All your guards are dead. Like, what?
You have the king of this entire country there. I'm sure people are going to come after you. I don't know. But thankfully, we don't have to worry about any of that, because hidden in a cloak, the boat paddler is actually Aramis, Charlie Sheen. He made it there before everyone else. How? I don't know. Because of reasons in story. The
plot says so.
Because it was a nice reveal. And he's being all godly and says, "You will never harm another person, I swear to God." Just about to punch Richelieu out, the king stops him, seeming as like he's about to forgive him. But the king actually turns around, slugs Richelieu, and he is punched into the water and supposedly dead? Maybe?
Question mark?
I don't know. Maybe we'll see him again in the sequel.
That would have been made if this movie had made more money.
Yeah. But yeah, he's punched, and you just see the silk red robe kind of just floating in the water, and the king walks over to Queen Anne, asks if they're all right, and one more time, a masculine thing, physical hand-to-hand violence. Queen Anne is so taken with him that they devour each other's mouths, and I guess good for them. But yeah, it's just like, if my husband's doing manly things, yes. Bring your tongue to me, sir. And
this movie, man.
Yes. And then our movie wraps up with a coronation ceremony of the king knighting D'Artagnan and making him a musketeer and fulfilling his dream of following in his father's footsteps. The king has this big speech about the values and the virtues of being a musketeer. And the tunic is placed on him. He finally has a kiss with Constance, just from out of nowhere. And that's where the film really ends up. The four musketeers are walking out of the palace. Gerard sees D'Artagnan across the marketplace and is still trying to avenge his sister's honor. And what he doesn't realize is that D'Artagnan is a musketeer, and musketeers do protect the king, the country, but also each other. So you threaten one musketeer, you threaten them all. Gerard and his brothers run away because they're being chased by hundreds of musketeers. Because
he's such a harmless villain that it does seem like overkill that the whole battalion is going after him. You just see like row after row of musketeers. This is how the movie ends just before cutting to credits. Just row after row of musketeer. And you're just like, I mean, a few of you, I mean, like just the four of them could do it, like they're pretty useless. Him and his four brothers have been proven to be pretty useless. Like D'Artagnan might be able to do it himself, to be honest. Like this is not needed. This seems like a waste of resources, guys.
And they're leaving the king unguarded, which is like their main thing, like to protect the king.
That is true.
This whole movie was a lie, I guess. Protect the king is our number one rule. No, it's not. You all ran after Gerard.
And then we cut to credits, and because, as we've discussed, this movie wants to be Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, we end with a Bryan Adams song. But, this Bryan Adams song, he's brought back up because he's also got Rod Stewart and Sting with him, and they're singing All for One and One for All, and it's, yeah.
It tried. It comes nowhere close to Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but it tried. It really did.
It's true. It's the box office success of this movie was nowhere close to Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and this single wasn't as successful as the mammoth hit that was Anything I Do, Everything. Oh God!
Everything I
do, I do it for you. Yeah.
I can't even recall the lyrics to All for Love at all.
Yeah,
but that's
it.
Three Musketeers. That's a journey down my childhood,
indeed, and mine as well. And as much as I've kind of shat on this movie, and as much as this movie does have a very problematic attitude to women, it was an entertaining rewatch today. And it brought back some fun childhood memories. And as I said at the start, I can see why I enjoyed this movie as a kid. And I can also see why it got terrible reviews. But I still enjoy it. And I think it zips by, and it's light and it's breezy. And if you don't think about it too much, it's a perfectly enjoyable film.
Absolutely. Regardless of the disappearing fencing sword, while they're riding their horse,
or the way the Rockford's thing doesn't quite add up, or the fact that Athos survived death somehow, or the fact that Aramis in two different scenes just turns up hidden in cloaks, so we don't understand how that's really happened. But other than all of that, turn your brain off just a little bit, and it's a fun time. Other than its brutal attitude towards Milady, harsh, overly harsh. She could have just turned. She could have just turned to being a good guy. I mean, fucking Darth Vader kills whole civilizations, and then at the end of Jedi, he's just like, "Oh, I repent," and everybody's like, "Oh, he's cool now." Fucking hell. It seems like Milady's killed less people than the Musketeers. I mean,
and
anyway.
Maybe that guy was a dick, maybe she had a reason to kill the guy, but
it seems like she's just doing things to survive. It's a harsh world for a woman, particularly in this movie universe. I don't know. It just seems like she deserved better. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. She did. I want to. Maybe we can ask her why she decided to jump. No, we can't.
Gonna put this episode out. #Justice for Milady.
Yes, I like it. We need a shirt. You need to get some merchandise. 90s action all the time. Justice for Milady to win.
Yes, yeah, that needs to happen. Yes. But we also need to bring this raucous episode, this Marx Brothers influenced episode, to an end. So quickly, in as few words as you can, do your social media promotion, Caleb, and tell people where they can find you, where they can find your channel, where they can make complaining comments about all the Marx Brothers impersonations we did throughout the movie.
Yes. Over on YouTube, the channel's name is Caleb Watches Movies, where I pick any movie that I own or one that's recommended to me. Three Musketeers I did a couple of months ago, so go ahead and check that out. Again, Caleb Watches Movies over on YouTube. Any handle in social media, you can find me too, Caleb Watch.
And you can find us if you want to make any complaints at 90s_all on Twitter, or you can rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, a bunch of other places you get podcasts. And if you did enjoy this episode and enjoyed some of our previous episodes, please make sure that the reviews are 5 stars. Because otherwise the algorithm thinks that we are shit, and we don't think that's true. So please, 5 stars if you're reviewing. Thank you very much. Now, some of you may be relieved that this episode is now officially over. The season is now officially over. But if you have enjoyed this listening experience, please do join us again in a few weeks' time when we will be beginning our Val Kilmer season. And that's all for this one. But until next time, see ya.